Right, so I admit it, I haven't been looksmaxxing as much as I should have, and today I've been rightly called out for it. This TikTok account, TheLooksMan, has just posted this video.
How attractive is ArthurTV?
Where he basically does with me what he does with all these other people, analyzes their faces and features to find out how attractive they are by giving them a score out of 10. Now, I obviously want to find out what exactly he said about me and what score he gave me. But first, I thought I'd get a little bit of perspective to see how cruel or kind he can be by watching some of the videos he's done on other people, including some of my friends. So let's start off with one that everyone should know, KSI.
Is KSI attractive? KSI has an average lower third and a very wide neck. Unfortunately, he has a super wide upper third. On top of his wide forehead, he has a bad receding hairline.
This is exactly what I'm worried about, just going straight for the insecurities. I'm sure he's mentioned before that he's not a big fan of his hairline, and just having a big red line drawn across it, and having this guy say to millions of people, "You've got a massive forehead and a receding hairline," you just be like, brilliant, thanks.
But he has a very ideal interocular distance. Sadly, KSI has a negative canthal tilt, even though he has healthy under eyes and average upper eyelid exposure. KSI has dominant cheekbones and an average jawline. He has a very wide African nose.
A very wide African nose is crazy, by the way. I think you can tell from his voice that the guy speaking is definitely a white guy.
Luckily, his lips are very thick and his eye size is ideal for his face.
How do you even know that? Like the ratios, like some of them you can guess, like, okay, fine, you got nice jawline, nice cheekbones, that kind of stuff. But when he's talking about interocular distance, how have you gone that deep into the science of attractiveness?
His facial thirds aren't balanced as his forehead is too wide, but the other 2/3 of his face are perfectly sized. His eyebrows are also lacking thickness. KSI is an example of an average guy with an overall rating of 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10? That is brutal. That whole thing seemed pretty harsh. I would have gone with higher than 4 out of 10, but let's see what he says about some of the other people. All right, time to do one of my friends, chrismd, the boy I went to school with.
How attractive is chrismd? Chris has an average lower third with a great neck width.
He's actually had a massive glow up, by the way, as well. The curly hair and the beard. From the quiff and the clean-shaven little boy he was a year or two ago. Massive glow up.
Upper third is slightly larger than it should be, making his facial thirds unbalanced. He has an almost perfect interocular distance, with the distance between his eyes being the size of an eye.
That's really annoying, actually, because he always mocks me for having my eyes way too far apart. So the fact that he's got a perfect interocular distance already pissed me off.
Great upper eyelid exposure and healthy under eyes, but sadly he has a negative canthal tilt. Chris has very dominant cheekbones and a strong sized jaw, all of which are very visible due to his low body fat percentage.
Yeah, he's trim now as well.
His nose is not too big and suits his face. This is mainly because the nose to lips width ratio is ideal.
That's an interesting one, because that's something me and Chris always joke about, is having quite big noses, so maybe I'm alone there.
His nose is even straight from his side profile. Chris's bottom lip is average thickness, but his upper lip is slightly too thin. His ears are also slightly bent outwards. Considering the fact that he is nearly in his 30s.
Pushing 30! Crikey, we are aging, but that is unnecessary. Also, the ear thing, he did have his ears pinned back, so feel bad laughing.
chrismd is an example of an average...
That's from my podcast, Bachelor After Podcast, where we had him on. Come on.
With an overall rating of 5 out of 10. Who should we rate next?
5 out of 10 is quite brutal. Okay, so this is filling me with a bit of dread, because I feel like he is going to be quite mean to me. But at the same time, if he's mean to everyone, I'm hoping for a minimum 5 here. All right, let's do someone that's more attractive, Harry. Whenever I do a Simon video with Harry, the edits go crazy. I know the fangirls absolutely love him, so he's objectively an attractive guy. If they don't give him at least a 6.5, I'm going to start questioning this guy.
How attractive is Wroetoshaw? Apart from the fact that he is always sticking out his bottom lip, they are still quite full and have a good width. His facial thirds are almost perfectly balanced, but he does cover up his hairline, so it could be bad. He has medium set cheekbones with average bone mass.
No, I don't think Harry's got a bad hairline. He's out in the wind too often.
The line isn't that strong, giving him more of an acute shaped face. He also has a short ramus.
Like, short ramus? Who calls it that?
His eyes have a negative canthal tilt, and his upper eyelid exposure is more than it should be.
Does he have too much upper eyelid exposure? Oh, as in an eyelid, I thought I meant the thing above it.
Harry's ears are a perfect size compared to his face and are in a great position, but his nose is slightly too big and has a bump.
His nose has a bump. That's something he's spoken about before as well.
Shaw is an example of an average guy with an overall rating of 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10 is crazy. I'm gonna get cooked here. If Harry's a 5 out of 10, I do not rate my chances of getting a good score here. I mean, if Harry's a 5, no offense to him, but what have they given Danny Aarons?
How attractive is Danny Aarons? Danny has a very big nose, which also bends slightly to the side. As we can see from his side profile, profile.
Why Danny uploaded these profiles? He's actually done really well with his beard and mullet lately. I think it really complements his face shape. But uploading these, oh my goodness.
His nose is not very appealing. Danny's interocular distance is slightly below the ideal ratio.
Like Danny 100% has to have one of the biggest glow-ups on YouTube.
He has healthy under eyes and average upper eyelid exposure. He even has dominant cheekbones and a great jawline.
Yeah, here, that side profile, that looks decent. That trim does him so many favors.
Danny has an average lower third and an average neck width. He has a great
getting a lot of greens here.
Perfect hairline, but sadly, his ears seem big compared to the rest of his face. His nose is also nearly twice the size of his interocular distance, and his lips are very thin. He has great balanced facial thirds. His eyebrows are a perfect thickness, and his beard is almost full. Danny is an example of an average guy with an overall rating of 4 out of 10.
Like, to give Harry a 5 and Danny out of 4 this scale is tiny. His tattoo has his name spelt wrong as well. I think there's an apostrophe on the S. How does that even happen? Okay, let's go with someone that I think should get a high score. The girls love Jude Bellingham, so.
Jude has pointy elf-like ears, which are not typically seen as attractive.
Like, going straight in for an insult is crazy.
His facial thirds are perfectly balanced, and he has a great hairline in the upper third of his face.
That's an
he has very
insane
visible,
hairline.
high-set cheekbones with a square chin. His jawline is very visible since he has rather hollow cheeks, but sadly, he has a short ramus. Jude has almond-shaped eyes with a positive canthal tilt and very minimal upper eyelid.
Does he even have a positive canthal tilt? I don't think he's getting this canthal tilt stuff right, you know.
The only negative about his eye area is that he has very thin eyelashes. His nose is slightly too big compared to the space between his eyes. His lips are very full, but the width compared to the size of his nose is slightly below the ideal ratio.
Like, I want to know what this guy thinks when he looks at himself in the mirror. Unless he's an absolute 10 out of 10, like, knowing all of this, it's just got to be brain rot. Because it just opens the doors to insecurities that, like, 99% of people just don't even know exist.
They are still perfectly sized and in a great position. Jude Bellingham is considered above average with a rating of 7 out of 10.
7? Like, I would imagine most girls put him in the, like, absolute upper echelons of looks. The scale being 4 to 7 from KSI and Danny Aarons to Jude Bellingham is mad. Alright, I gotta see what they've given Batch. Like, this is a funny one because objectively he's got a lot of attractive features, but also, like, I know that girls definitely will bump him up 1 or 2 at least from his personality, and this guy will not factor that in, so I feel like he could give him a lower score that girls would absolutely hate and completely disagree with.
His facial thirds are slightly unbalanced since his middle third is larger than the rest of the face, but he does have very good bone structure with a wide jaw. His ramus is almost the perfect length. ItalianBach's eyes have a negative canthal tilt.
Like, that's not true, surely. There's no negative canthal tilt there.
Luckily, his upper eyelid exposure is very ideal and he has healthy under eyes.
That's something he's spoken about on the podcast, actually, is that he doesn't like his under eyes, so I reckon he will have watched that and been very happy with it.
His nose is very big compared to the rest of his face, and it looks like a typical Italian nose.
Oh my god. He hasn't even got an Italian nose. He said on the podcast that he gets it from his Swiss side of his family. This guy does not watch the Bach and Arthur podcast. Massive L for the looksman. We do talk about having massive noses on the podcast all the time, so I'm sure he'll take that one.
He has an average neck width, healthy skin, and good body fat percentage. Unfortunately, his ears are too big for the size of his face and point outwards. ItalianBach can be considered average with an overall rating of 5.5 out of 10.
Nah, 5.5 is insane. I'm a fully straight man, but Bach is a handsome dude. Look at George sticking up for him. ItalianBach can be considered flawless, actually. George, I swear, if I get to my comment section and you haven't stuck up for me, I'm going to be heartbroken. Yeah, Batch is flawless. I'm cooked. As if they're questioning this man's attractiveness. Yeah, the girls, I knew they weren't going to agree. 5.5, are we being serious? He's the most handsome man ever. Cole Palmer, this is one that the boys will know the looksmaxxers just aren't going to like. He gets mocked for being a mouth breather and having no chin, so I feel like this is going to be brutal.
How attractive is Cole Palmer? Cole has a very receding chin and a very narrow lower third.
Straight in with it.
Years of frequent mouth breathing.
Oh my god, I knew that was coming. It was so obvious.
Ocular distance is slightly smaller than average. He also has a slight negative canthal tilt and unhealthy under eyes. Palmer's nose is well sized compared to his face.
Okay, come on, we got some greens.
And bent to the side. His nose also has a slight bump when you look at it from a side profile point of view.
Quite like a bump in a nose. I think I've got one. I think he's going to call out for that, but I think it looks masculine.
Basically non-existent jawline structure, giving his face a long and acute shape.
Goodness. He has just got a gormless look, doesn't he? And it doesn't help the fact that when he's in interviews, it just doesn't ever seem like he has any idea what's going on.
AM and PM. What?
And his lips are very plump, but sadly, they have a smaller width than they should compared to the size of his nose. Palmer is an example of an average-looking guy with an overall rating of 4.5 out of 10.
4.5, like the fact that he's that close. The batch is a 5.5 and he's a 4.5. All right, let's get another mouth breather in here. I love Freezy, but I'm sure he would admit to himself that he's a mouth breather.
Freezy has unbalanced facial thirds with a large forehead and a long mid-face. He has high-set cheekbones, which are seen as attractive. His lower third width is below the ideal ratio. He has a receding chin and a short rainless. This could mean he is a mouth breather. Cal has blue eyes with a negative canthal tilt.
Like, I don't see a negative canthal tilt there. Why does he say that on everyone?
And healthy under eyes. But his eyebrows are slightly too thin. His lips are very plump, and the width to nose ratio is very ideal.
I wonder if he'll factor into how tall he is as well, because like girls will just hear that he's like 6'3" or whatever and just be like, instant 7 out of 10 at least.
Also has a skinny upturned nose. His chin has an acute long shape and his ears are slightly pointing outwards.
And like he's got really cool fashion sense as well, I think, Freezy, which won't be taken into account. So
Cal Freezy is considered an average looking guy with an overall rating of 5 out of 10.
Yeah, Freezy getting a 5 and Batch getting a 5.5. It sounds like I'm rimming Batch now. Yeah, I need to step off the Batch one. Let's go for another one that I think will be attractive. I think Mini Minter. He's a good looking guy.
His thirds aren't balanced. He has a big forehead, making his upper third bigger than the rest of his face.
Yeah, that's kind of fair, I guess.
A skinny neck width. Simon's eyes have a negative canthal tilt. The
and does he? I don't see that
slightly
either.
Below the ideal ratio. His eyebrows are lacking thickness and droop downwards. Luckily, he has a grey under eye area and his eyes are blue, which is the most attractive colour. His ears are perfectly sized for his face. Even though his lips are thin, they are a good size compared to the width of his nose. But sadly, his nose is slightly too big for the size of his face, as we can see from the side profile. Simon's face is narrow. He doesn't have a wide jaw and his chin has an acute shape. Mini Minter is an example of an average looking guy with an overall rating of 4.5 out of 10.
Oh, that was way more brutal than I was expecting. I think Mini Minter's a good looking guy. And literally like the top comment says here, yeah, he's still bagged ItalianBach, exactly. This channel is really humbling. All right, surely Charles Leclerc.
How attractive is Charles Leclerc? Leclerc has a very delicate face with unbalanced facial thirds. This is because his lower third width is below the ideal ratio. He has almond-shaped green eyes with a slight negative...
Like that is just a good looking guy. And again, where is the negative canthal tilt?
And slightly more upper eyelid exposure than the ideal amount. But he has an almost perfect interocular
that just is a good looking dude, isn't it?
Leclerc has great high set cheekbones and a good length ramus. From the side, his nose is straight with a slight bump. He even has a slight receding chin and his lips could do with more thickness. Luckily, his lips have an ideal width to nose ratio. His ears are in an ideal position and a great size, but unfortunately, they point outwards. It's clear he trains his neck and the width is perfect.
There is no way they're giving this guy less than a 7.5 out of 10, surely.
Overall, Charles has good facial harmony and can be considered above average with an overall rating of 7 out of 10.
I mean, okay, at least they haven't done him crazy dirty, given, like, relative to the usual scale, that's, I guess, about what I'd expect, but, like, he is objectively an 8 out of 10 at least, right? Like, ask any Formula 1 girl and they are 100% saying he's an 8 or a 9.
How attractive is Lando Norris?
Lando Norris is weirdly someone I get compared to a lot. A lot of the comments on my YouTube videos and TikToks are always like, Arthur, you look so much like Lando Norris. So I feel like if we have similar features, we might end up with a similar one here.
Wide shaped face with unbalanced facial thirds. This is because his upper third is above the ideal ratio. He has medium set cheekbones, but at least his ramus is a great length. He has an acute gonial angle with forward chin projection. He has blue eyes with a negative canthal tilt, bad under eyes.
Another negative canthal tilt. Is that even true? Maybe I just don't know what it means or what it looks like, but that looks like straight eyes to me. Like negative canthal tilt, I would think your eyes would be like proper wonky.
His interocular distance is above the ideal ratio. Luckily, he has very minimal upper eyelid exposure, which makes his eye area attractive. Lando's lips have average thickness, but the lips to nose width ratio is perfect.
I'm trying to figure out what exactly it is about him that makes people think I look like him. I do kind of see it, but I can't really like identify the features. Do you know what I mean?
He has strong facial bone mass with a good sized jaw. His nose is perfectly straight and almost the ideal size compared to the rest of the face.
Yeah, in the nose because I've got a massive nose, so it's not that.
Those eyebrows have good thickness. Even though they are a bit too bushy and droop down, his ears are slightly protruding. He has an almost ideal chin to filter and projection. His hairline is almost perfect.
What does that even mean?
A bit receding at the moment. Overall, Lando has good facial harmony and can be considered average with an overall rating of 6 out of 10.
Yeah, Yeah, he's got a smaller nose, a better hairline. I'm cooked. I genuinely think it might be over for me. I think I might be getting a 5 here, and that might be generous. All right, we'll do one more. We'll look at willne and then we'll go into me.
Willne has a very wide squared shaped face.
Of course, like that's the one thing everyone always talks about with the Will.
Like Steve from Minecraft. Luckily, he has a great width to height ratio and very strong facial bone mass with a long ramus. His cheeks are slightly hollow, but he has medium set
Remus.
Sadly, he has unbalanced facial thirds, with his lower third being below the ideal size and his upper third being too large.
Like, I don't look at him and be like, this forehead is too big. This is a very, very square head.
With canthal tilt and very minimal upper eyelid exposure.
Again, the canthal tilt I just do not see.
However, they are slightly too squinted and his interocular distance is bad compared to the ideal ratio, even though his lips have average thickness. The lips to nose width ratio isn't ideal, as his nose size is slightly too big compared to the rest of his face. From the side profile point of view, his nose has a straight shape with a slight bump. His upper lip
a slight bump. Where is that bump?
His chin projection is slightly receding. Luckily, he has a very ideal acute gonial angle. Overall, willne can be considered average with an overall rating of 6.5 out of 10.
That is a strong rating. I was not expecting a 6.5. Like Harry a 5 and Will a 6.5. This whole thing is making me think that the scale is dubious. So I'm nervous about what I'm going to get cooked for, but I feel like the end rating won't mean that much. Okay, based on what I've seen already, I think they're going to say my eyes are too far apart, my nose is too big, I've got the nose bump, I think my jawline's okay and my hairline's okay. My upper eyelid exposure, I don't show that at all. My remus fairly normal. So hard to gauge. All right, let's just do it.
How attractive is ArthurTV? Arthur's facial thirds are unbalanced. His upper third is too large compared to the rest of his face.
I have a big forehead, I kind of do. Okay, fine.
But he has a very good face height to width ratio with good bone mass. He even has a good length ramus. Luckily,
my jawline's
he has a very good eye area with very minimal upper eyelid exposure.
Yeah, I don't have any. I always get comments from people thinking I'm East Asian.
Even though he has a slight negative canthal tilt.
No, I got negative canthal tilted. That can't be true. I've always looked at me and thought I had straight eyes. I think this canthal tilt thing's definitely off.
Under eye area is great.
That's weird actually, because I always thought these things get quite puffy. I've got quite like naturally puffy eyes, so I thought that was another thing he'd comment on.
His inferior eyelid reminds me of Francisco Lakowski.
I get that a lot as well. People say I'm like a very ugly version of this guy, because I think we should have similar eyes. We've got that similar sort of like quite squinted eye, and we've got no upper eyelid exposure, and yeah, I definitely see it with the eyes. He's just got better features than me in pretty much every other sense. Oh, I wish the looksman had done someone like this. I want to see what like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 is for this guy.
Sadly, he has a bad interocular distance that is above the ideal ratio. Arthur's lips have average thickness.
You know, I never knew that as well until Chris told me that. Chris told me one day, like, your eyes are very far apart, and I just never clocked it. And now when I look in the mirror all the time, I'm like, oh yeah. And this confirms it.
Arthur's lips have average thickness.
Average thickness. I do have quite chunky lips, I think.
His nose is very wide compared to the rest of his face, but his lip to nose width ratio is ideal since his lips are very wide.
Oh, okay, yeah, that I'll take. I'll take that there's a good ratio, that they're balanced out. I'm just very aware that I have a big nose.
His eyebrows have a perfect thickness and a shape with a neutral tilt. He has a slightly receding chin, but this is hardly visible. His ears could be smaller as they aren't as well proportioned to the rest of his face.
I don't mind having
Arthur
big ears.
has medium set cheekbones and slightly hollow cheeks. These are especially visible because he has a low body fat percentage.
Oh, come on, they got the physique shot out. Come on. Okay, here we go. Overall, God, there was quite a lot of bad things in there, but some decent things to balance it out. I'm thinking he's going 5.
The TV is close to above average with an overall rating of 6.5 out of 10.
6.5. Okay, I'll take that. That is very generous. Thank you, Looksman. All right, what are the comments saying? WazzyWick. This proves objective measurements don't mean anything. He's definitely a 10. Come on, WazzyWick. Thank you. I actually recognise this guy from my comment section. He's very nice. Shout out, WazzyWick. Thank you. You're wrong, I'm afraid. 10 out of 10. Come on, B. B, you may be wrong, little bro. He's a 10 out of 10, though. Oh, people are really sticking up for me. I really like this. I don't feel like there needs to be much backlash out of this, though, because I think 6 out of 10 is pretty fair, particularly on this guy's scale. This entire account just goes to show that this whole individual facial features thing is just such bollocks. Textbook attractiveness just doesn't mean anything. It's all so subjective, and you can have bad features that harmonize really nicely. So hey, forget all of this textbook nonsense. When you look in the mirror, just be like, you know what, I think I look nice. Well, on that wholesome note, I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already and you're new here, please feel free to subscribe down below, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Oh, and in case someone hasn't already said it today, you look great. Bye.